Welcome to Biztech's Technology Show, the show where we feature tech companies operating globally, talking about their solutions and how they make a difference to their customers' businesses. Now, today our conversation is with Darren Rushworth. He's the president of NICE International. NICE is a worldwide leading provider of both cloud and on-premise enterprise software solutions. Now, to tell us more, Darren, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Great to be here.
Now, Darren, for a start, give us an overview of NICE and your history.
The company started almost 40 years ago, and we started our business really around compliance recording solutions. So it was a very niche area, but you got to remember, this is before digital was a thing. So when you talk about recording calls and those sorts of stuff, the images of sort of the CIA and spooks come to people's minds, right? And it probably wasn't that far away because you literally had to go into a telephone exchange and sort of plug into the lines. But you know, we've come a long way. We did that for regulatory purposes and then to help companies understand what was being said on the call. But that's where we started, and obviously things have evolved significantly from those days pre-digital.
Now, then in that case, bring us back to 2022 and walk us through your product and solution suites and how you help solve customers' problems.
Yeah, look, it's a tremendous question. Maybe I'll just continue on the timeline to give a view of how we believe the industry has sort of moved over that and grown over that time. So we started off really around the contact center or around the telephone side of the business where people were calling in for customer service. We said, well, okay, one thing that now that we've captured all the information for regulation purposes, what can we do with that information? Can we help the agents potentially perform better? Can we measure them and monitor them to make sure that they're being compliant and doing all the things that a customer or a company would expect of their best people and their frontline people? And then we started analyzing those calls using technology and voice analytics and things like that. Then we started providing basically workforce management. So how do you know that you have the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time? And you know, and that was very much focused on the service being provided by the company. And then came along the age of virtual assistants. So if we can actually offload some of the more mundane processes, that's a good thing, and that frees up people's time and so forth. So a lot of our initial years was really around what we call workforce optimization, was really around customer service and teleselling and things like that. Then it was a big shift as we also moved more recently. There was people really wanted to be able to do self-serving more. They wanted to be able to leverage their mobile phones. So it's quite interesting, as consumers want to be able to self-serve, they want to be able to answer their problems at a time of need. At the same time, ironically, companies actually want them to self-serve as well. So there's actually this push from both sides. The companies are saying, oh, how can we can provide better systems to allow people to serve themselves and not have to come through all of our back end. But at the same time, consumers wanted that too. And there was a bit of a gap because companies, there wasn't the technology and processes and artificial intelligence, I guess, in place to enable that to happen until recently. And I think that's kind of where NICE is today. We actually really, I believe, is one of the only organizations on the planet that actually can do that from as I described our journey, from the sort of hardcore contact center systems all the way to, you know, when someone goes into Google or on their mobile application or whatever, and providing a seamless, or we call it a frictionless customer experience across that whole platform. And that was a lot to take in, but I hope that's
quite a lot. But you know how you can help us understand that better, Darren?
Mm-hmm.
Could you walk us through how you've helped a customer and all the solutions that you've used to help them?
Yeah, so it's a difficult question to answer, because when we talked about the customer in the past, we were talking about corporations typically, or governments trying to serve their consumers or constituents. And that's why I said the big part of our history was in that space. Now when we talk about the customer, we're really talking about the consumer. So there's been a big sort of switch at NICE, and I think in the industry in general, saying, well, it's one thing to provide better systems to other businesses and better technology to the businesses, but really what we need to be thinking about is how do they help them serve consumers. So we do it in a lot of different ways. It can be as simple as just enabling WhatsApp messaging as another form of customer communication. We saw a big uptake in a lot of digital and customer demands when, during COVID, if your laptop or your phone broke, you couldn't take it to a repair center. You had to find another way to do that. And there's a good example of a change in the dynamic. All of a sudden, there was a big increase in the amount of interactions and requests coming into non-physical locations.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to deal with that. And I know an area you care about a lot, spoke before, was about people and HR and these things. Well, having your employees also working at home was another big shift, where we were able to provide solutions to companies to enable them to do a much better job of employee engagement and other things around that too.
While researching for this interview, one of the interesting case studies I found was really something that you're providing for the UK police forces.
Okay.
Could you enlighten us onto those solutions and how you are helping them with digital evidence management?
Yeah, okay, you've done your homework. So yes, so it's interesting because when we talk about compliance and we talk about managing digital assets and so forth, we do that in a lot of different ways. And one of I think is unique use cases for our technology is in what we term it public safety, is within the public safety realm. So that can be emergency services, it can be police, it can be fire, ambulance, and all those types of really critical services. The digital evidence management is actually very, very cool. If you think about it, is one of the biggest challenges today in a crime scene or even in any emergency is how do investigators and people take all the pieces of information and bring those together? And remember, today a lot of information can be digital in nature. It could be phone, chat, messages. It doesn't have to be physical evidence like a knife, right? That's there, but it can be a lot of things. So we take in things like body cam streams, for example, and we put all that together so that a police force can, from that perspective, can do all their investigation and your due diligence, collating all that information from witnesses and subjects and digital and what have you. The next piece of that, which is really exciting, is we don't just do it for the police. If you think about the amount of evidence and really the amount of work involved these days in collecting this sort of data, it's how do you then move that across to the justice system? So now you're talking about courts and solicitors and lawyers, and these people also need that information. And then finally, God forbid, it could end up with the corrections department, right? So people could go all the way through. So we're putting that system together from capturing, sort of body cam imagery all the way to corrections and processing and justice is a really kind of exciting use case for this technology.
Okay, so just leveraging and I'm making a leap here, trying to analyze all the stuff that you've just told us. Essentially, what you're doing is, on one hand, NICE Technology will leverage on artificial intelligence as you're pulling in the data points and analyzing stuff.
Yes.
Then the second part of the equation is also the self-service component, as you said, to the solicitors and other stakeholders in the value chain that basically will have access to all these data and use it for their own respective needs. Am I backing up?
Yeah, it's a complex area, but I think you've done a good job of summarizing the key areas. I think at the end of the day, it's how do you capture everything that you possibly could capture, whether that's analog, digital, or physical in some cases. How do you manage that, provide the right level of security, because obviously you're talking about very secure areas here and confidential areas, and then allow the right stakeholders to write it, to access it when and how they need it. Yeah, that's probably the sum.
Now, COVID has been an amazing accelerator for digital transformation.
Absolutely.
From a customer experience standpoint, how can organizations remain agile and resilient, and at the same time make the next leap forward in terms of customer experience?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I'll start with what sort of was the impact that we saw on COVID on the whole customer experience area. I think the immediate one was people were forced to have their employees work from home, right? So immediately what you saw was a need to provide company level systems outside the company. If you think about it, right? Historically, it was all centralized, on-premise, secure. So you had all of that. And then overnight, in some cases, you had to say, well, how do I have all my work systems and my company systems accessible to 10,000 people that aren't in my office? That was a huge challenge for companies. And the ones that responded the best had cloud-based systems. So one of the beauty of the cloud-based system, and it definitely accelerated the adoption of cloud probably by 5 years is what we've seen, was really they were able to respond very quickly, because having someone at home, it really didn't matter because you were using cloud infrastructure. What we also saw was companies really realized they couldn't do it, and they had a big aha moment, and that pushed them to the cloud. It tipped them over the edge. So we saw a very big uptake of cloud. I think that was the first one from really just actually having people that could answer the phone and do their jobs was the first thing. I think the second thing that then was a challenge is, what are they doing, right? So now I've got all my people at home, but I have no idea what they're doing. I have no idea if they're doing their job effectively. What are they talking about? If I'm hiring people, you know, how are they performing? So there was a whole realm of need, really, I guess, for solutions around workforce engagement and making sure that we had you know, automated quality management to help them. You had the right knowledge bases. You had ways of touch base with your employees continuously to make sure that they were actually doing well and also doing what you wanted them to do. So that was another area that we see and continue to see growth in terms of business adoption.
Okay, so Darren, I'm going to wear the hat of a CIO.
Mm-hmm.
Why should I buy from NICE? Because you're touching across a wide spectrum of customer experience solutions, and there are a lot of competitors in this space.
Sure.
What makes you stand out?
Yeah, so I think really the key is we call, as I mentioned before, we call it about having a frictionless customer experience. That I want to be able to contact I don't actually want to contact a company, but I want to be able to solve some kind of a need. It could be renew a subscription, it could be fix something, it could be ask a question. There's lots of things that I want to be able to do. Now, I want to be able to do that using the channel of my choice. Now, people talk about this a lot, saying, well, I want to do it, you know, on chat or whatever, but actually the number one channel of choice for most people is Google, believe it or not. People that, how do I, you know, update my contact details with my bank? How do I fix my SIM card?
And I'm one of those people.
We all are, right? Google's number one, and your friends and peers are probably number two. Let's be honest. I always joke that no one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to call my bank and ask them a question. I don't know anyone that does that, right?
Yeah.
So we all want to self-serve at that level. I think the difference is that if you can't get the answer directly there in Google, and we're saying we have systems that allow you to do that, like takes company information and puts it into Google, then you typically will end up with a chat, or you want someone to come to you proactively and say, can I help you? Is there something you want to need? And you can have some very clever conversational AI that can try and understand these days in much more sophisticated ways than you used to be able to, because of the sheer volumes of data, and then try and solve your problem. If you still can't do that, so you're talking about machine or information being projected to you, then you've got sort of some kind of digital chat or automated version. Then it can go to assisted chat, and then finally can go to a human being on the phone if you really have a very complex problem that they can't solve. And I think, right back to your question, I think the difference between NICE and everybody else is we do the whole journey. And when you go right through, we know who you are and what you've been doing. So whether it's from Google to a chatbot, to an automated system, to a live agent, to a person actually helping solve your problem, or you go into a branch, we actually have the solutions that run across that, and no one else does. There's no other company that has that. And we believe that seamless journey is very, very important.
Now, Darren, then looking ahead, 2022, 2023, what are some of the key trends that you've seen in the customer experience space?
Well, yeah, we talked about a couple of them. Obviously, cloud continues to be a very, very big thing because people want the agility and the flexibility. COVID's another great example. Another great example of what COVID did was the fluctuation on employees, on staffing levels. If you can imagine, unfortunately, some companies like airlines and travel and hospitality had to actually lay off a lot of people. Now these things have bounced back, like really rebounded very, very fast. And those people aren't there to hire. So cloud was able to provide a lot of agility and things like that you weren't able to have before. We think the other one is people are not very taken with chatbots and automation because historically, and it's absolutely true, most of the time, it's actually more than 70% of the time, they didn't actually solve the problem the person was trying to solve, right? They didn't fix the need. One of the things that we see as a trend now, when certainly it's an area where we think we're leading, is we've got through our contact center solutions, we have billions of interactions. In other words, billions of people going backwards and forwards, asking questions and trying to get help. We're able to run AI models through that now to actually then use that to program the technology and provide, and the sheer volumes of customer experience information that we have and the models that we have, it means that we can actually drive a lot better automation than was able to be done in the past. So I think everybody's got lots of data. They're trying to work out what to do with it. I think that's any industry. It's not certainly just for the customer experience. But I really do think the number of interactions because of digital today, where computers are talking to computers even, it might not even be a person, and the cloud are certainly two of the areas where we see a lot of impact on the customer experience space.
Now, looking ahead as well for NICE, specifically in the Asia Pacific region and also in EMEA, what's in the pipeline for NICE?
Yeah, so I think the key thing for NICE as an organization, there's kind of a couple of different tacks to this. One was I mentioned about the solution set. So coming very much from a voice, a service organization to a much more digital, proactive service serving of customers and bringing it all together as an area where we'll continue to develop and acquire companies in terms of moving forward in that space and really filling out that space. From a more of a go-to-market, if I can call it that, or about our corporation, we made a decision about 4 or 5 years ago to really significantly increase our business outside of the Americas. The Americas has been historically, particularly the US market, our biggest business. And we did that with expanding our very heavily into ANZ, for example, Australia and New Zealand, and some other markets. We're going to really double down on that this year. So we've just announced that our flagship customer experience software, we call it CX1 Cloud, is now available outside of Australia. It's also in Japan. We recently announced a couple of weeks ago that we have launched that in Singapore. We also just released and launched it in the UAE, or the United Arab Emirates. So as you can see, it's been a busy year already. That's what we've done so far this year, but we're really going to increase our investment. It's not just about technology, it's building the right infrastructure, support, services around that. And I think most recently we announced the combination of our EMEA or Europe business with our APAC business is very, very new. Bringing those together to once again create more critical mass and put even more focus on our international business and get really an unfair share of the investment from the board as well.
Sounds like a very exciting times, Darren. But I want to now zoom in on Darren, the tech leader.
Okay.
You've managed across the Asia Pacific regions with the likes of giants like SAP and Oracle for over 2 decades. How have
a lot more than 2 decades, but anyway, unfortunately.
I have to be. You look young, so
you're being very kind. Yeah.
How have your previous roles shaped your management style and then influenced how you manage NICE?
Yeah, really good question. And the thing is, and I can't speak really about the previous companies I've worked for, but one thing that I can talk about is company culture. And anybody that's been in the industry and some of the names that you mentioned, there's very different types of organizations, even though they're in similar fields of influence, let me put it that way, or spheres of influence, but they're very different types of companies and very different cultures. So I think, you know, one good thing about experience is you gain experience, right? Hopefully, and you learn from it. And one of the things is I've seen the way some companies operate, and I think some do it much better than others. I've kind of got some tenets that I believe, like I really believe in a single ownership of a customer, right? I think it's very important, those types of things. And some companies don't always agree with those things, that they do different things. I've seen companies that are really much more family. You got a feeling of you belong, you are engaged, you feel like they really care about me. And then there was others where it's really about, you know, just ka-ching, let's just make money.
Yeah.
And
what were your numbers like in the last quarter?
Right. It's numbers. And you kind of go, well, am I a number, right? At the end of the day, that's what you feel like. And so, yeah, so I think it's helped me a lot in my journey, because by going through these experiences, you kind of go, well, at the end of the day, we're all employees, right? We're all people. That is more important. You know how you like to be treated. And it's obviously by learning those different corporate cultures and things, it enables me to hopefully provide that same environment within my organization.
And how about being a leader in technology? The complexity is increased, the pace has increased, and how you manage your people has changed. What are some key lessons you'd like to share with other leaders in the region?
Look, yeah, it's a challenging time. There's no doubt about it, but it's funny how it sort of pivots in different directions. Look, I think some things have changed. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, one of the biggest changes in the short term has been just the lack of talent. And that's a real serious issue for most technology companies and businesses around the world at the moment. There really isn't enough talent. Before you had sort of your pick and you could choose the people, but it becomes a lot more competitive now. Look, I'll go back to the fundamentals, Brian. I think some things haven't changed. Values and culture hasn't changed. At the end of the day, people, you know, there's all these old sort of stories that, you know, that people don't join a company for the money or whatever, or, you know, and they join because of the company, but they stay because of the leader and all these sorts of things. But I think at the end of the day, I still think it's about the engagement and caring about your people. I don't think that's fundamentally changed. What I think has changed is the way that you do it. We're living in a much more diversified and remote, you know, system now. With COVID has made that even worse. But there was already people working from home before that. People are now looking more at the gig economy. So they're saying, well, I don't want to commit to a company, you know, 40 hours a week, or you know, or I want to, you know, just do my own thing. So look, I think there's some complexities around that. There's obviously some technology and other things that can help with that. But I honestly believe that at the end of the day, it really comes down to building having empathy with your people, building that trust and motivation. And then the only thing, as I say, it's become even more important than it used to be. It was always important, but now it's become even more important, because you can't always just take your people out for a cup of coffee, right? Which you could do so easily before, or you could, in the pantry, you have lunch together or something. And that, you know, that human element has gone away. So I think today the biggest challenge for leaders is actually, how do you continue to build that kind of relationship and show support and help your team when you can't necessarily do it face to face? I think that's probably the biggest single challenge.
Darren, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show. Thanks too, Brian. Appreciate it. I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Darren Rushworth, President of NICE International, on Biztech's Technology Show. This video and podcast will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.